Hey plant nerds, so it's Kiri. I am out here in the garden and today I wanted to talk to you guys about saving seeds for next season, why to do it, different types of plants to take into account, pollination, methods, and storage. So we're going to kind of cover everything, or hopefully everything. At the end of this, you'll hopefully feel more confident about saving your own seeds and will be encouraged to save your own seeds, which is something that I do every single year. So if you're new around here, hi, I am Kiri. I am a micro homesteader in Zone 5B in Pickering, Ontario. And I love growing my own food and encouraging other people to do the same. On this channel, we talk about all things micro homesteading, from growing your own food outdoors in the garden, as well as indoors hydroponically, and other ways you can become more self-sufficient and reduce your reliance on the grocery store. So if that is your thing, or if you want that to be your thing, then please go ahead and hit subscribe and the notification bell and all that good stuff below, so you'll know when I post videos in the future and you won't miss out on anything. So first off, let's talk about the why of saving seeds. For me, there's four main reasons. Number one is cost savings. If I'm saving my seeds, I don't have to buy them again. I buy the varieties that I want once, and then I just keep saving them year over year, and that's more money in my pocket. On top of that, it's a way to increase self-sufficiency. If I know that I'm going to save my seeds, then I don't have to worry if those are in stock in the store. With everything with COVID, we saw all the rush online for everybody suddenly getting interested in growing food and being more self-sufficient. And at the beginning, at least, a lot of the seed stores were overwhelmed and they were out of varieties. And there were a lot of people that regularly grow their food that if they weren't saving their own seeds, couldn't get the seeds that they wanted. So at least this way, then it's on you to make sure that you save the seeds and don't forget and you keep track of it. So that is one thing to consider, but it's just another way to reduce your reliance on somebody else. Another big thing, at least for me, is local adaptation. I get pretty much all my seeds from Baker Creek, or I get some from Row 7 Seeds. I'll put the links to them below. I think Baker Creek's in Missouri. I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely not in Pickering, Canada. They're growing all of their seeds, which is fantastic. I am so thankful that I found them. But they're not where I live. They're going to have a different climate, they're going to have different pest pressures, they're going to have different diseases, and seeds that you save, you're saving the strongest ones from the generation before. So those become locally adapted to where they are. So if I get seeds from there, they may not grow as well here as they did in Missouri or California or wherever the seeds are from. But when I grow them in my own yard and I save the seeds from the strongest plants that have the best fruit from my own yard, those are the ones that grew best here. It's just a way of increasing your yields because the seeds that you save are going to be the strongest and the best to grow in your garden, which is going to be different than somebody else's garden, which is going to definitely be different than another country. And the last one is something that is important to me because I grow only heirloom seeds. And one of the things that in preserving the seeds, I'm preserving the history of those seeds. I learn the story of the seeds. It's one of the reasons I love heirloom seeds, because I love finding out the history behind them, and they have such rich stories. So by saving the seeds and me learning the stories, I get to tell the next person about how cool this variety is because it was handed to some old lady by some soldier in some war, and that all the seeds can be traced back to that. Like, for me, that's just, I'm such a nerd. I love it. Pretty much sums up the whys, at least from my perspective: the cost savings, the self-sufficiency, the local adaptation, and the preserving the history of those seeds and their stories. Which brings us on to point number 2 of saving seeds for next season: the types of plants. This is going to be really important when you're saving seeds. One of the things that's important to know is, yes, you can save seeds from a hybrid, but you will not get what you expect. So I don't grow hybrids for the most part, though I am going to be adding one next year, which is the Sun Gold tomato, because I've heard it's just incredible. So I'm going to try that one out. So if I was going to save a seed from a hybrid tomato, what would happen? Well, next year I would get tomatoes, 100%, and they would be edible. But they wouldn't be the same as the tomato that I saved the seeds from. Typically with a hybrid, they're going to revert back to the characteristics of one of the parent plants. So maybe it was a super sweet yellow tomato. I might get a not so yellow tomato that's still sweet, or I could get a yellow tomato that's not sweet at all. So it's not bad to save seeds from the hybrid, but you don't have predictability, which can be really important as you get to know the varieties that you like and how they grow and how to best grow them epically. So if you end up with something different the next year, what you're used to doing may not work. Which brings me to my absolute favorite, heirlooms, which if you've been around here for a hot minute, then you know I am a complete and utter heirloom snob because I just love them. They're not always the most resilient, but they have such great flavors and such variety, and yeah, I could gush about heirlooms all day. If you're saving seeds from an heirloom, that's where the predictability comes in. As long as you account for cross-pollination, but we'll get to that in a second. But done properly, an heirloom seed that is saved will give you the exact same plant the next year and every other year after it. The reason for that is that it is open pollinated. Open pollinated just means that it can reproduce without having to have any intervention like you would need to have for a hybrid seed. So hybrid seeds need to be recreated every single year so you can have that plant. With an open pollinated variety, you don't have to worry about that. Now, all heirlooms are open pollinated, but not all open pollinated seeds are heirloom. So what does that mean? Well, there are new varieties being created constantly. Hybrid varieties that become stabilized and then become open pollinated. So if you put in the work, you can take a hybrid, transition it over to open pollinated, because we wouldn't have the varieties, even the heirloom varieties that we have today, if that wasn't possible. It just takes a lot of time. The difference with the open pollinated versus heirlooms is that the heirlooms have that history that I love. You can have an open pollinated that you can save and you'll have the predictability. It just may not have the backstory that the heirlooms have. And then the other thing to consider is annual versus biennial. Annual plants are going to give you seeds every season. Biennial plants are going to need to overwinter before they will produce seeds. So that's an important thing to know when you're trying to save seeds from your garden. Next, we need to talk about pollination, because without pollination, there's no seeds. When we get into talking about pollination, we need to keep in mind there will be varieties that will self-pollinate, and there's other varieties that are going to need some sort of manual intervention to get them pollinated. So self-pollinating plants are things like tomatoes and peppers and beans, and things that require manual pollination or the help of pollinators, or you, is going to be things like squash and cucurbits. Self-pollinating varieties are going to have the female or male parts of the plant within each flower. Everything they need is there. When you get into the plants that require manual pollination, you're going to have distinct female flowers and male flowers. When it comes to things like squash, the male flowers tend to come out early. They are on a longer stem and they stick out further from the vine, whereas the female flowers are going to be shorter. They come out later and they will have a little teeny tiny baby version of the fruit underneath. You need to get the pollen from the male flower into the female flower so that that little baby plant becomes a big plant that you can then later harvest. It becomes really important to encourage pollinators into your yard. So those giant sunflowers back there, they bring in the bees, lots of bees. And the squash flowers themselves bring in a lot of bees too, but anything you can do to attract pollinators to your yard when you're growing your own food is a bonus, and it's a must really. You need to get all of those amazing insects in here, as well as just beneficial insects. A lot of that comes down to planting the flowers that are going to bring, and the plants that are going to attract them. Which brings us to cross-pollination. So if I was to get the male pollen from, say, one of my sugar pumpkins into the female flower of one of my koji nut squash, I'm going to get a koji nut squash this year. But if I were to save the seeds from that koji nut next year, I'd have something that was kind of a sugar pumpkin-y, koji nutty squash baby. And basically what would have happened is I've created a hybrid. So when you have squash and you're saving seeds from it, it is best not to have too many of the same varieties around, because it just increases the chance of cross-pollination happening, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you might get some really cool new squash that you love. There's always an aspect of experimentation in the garden, and it should be there. Like you don't want to lose that magic of what nature does, and sometimes nature makes some weird stuff. For us, micro homesteading, we don't have a lot of space. So sometimes if you do want to grow a bunch of different varieties, then they are going to be close. You know that you need to save the seeds what you can do is that's really where the hand pollination is going to come in. I'll put a link up above to my video on how to hand pollinate squash. And one of the things you would need to do is to make sure that you are on those flowers, and as soon as you see a female one, you need to be coming out super early in the morning and grab yourself a paintbrush, and then you're going to manually move the pollen from one of the male flowers that you know is of the same plant onto the female flower, and then you tie it shut gently. And you're going to do that every day for like 12 days. And you're going to keep tying it shut and just basically not letting any pollinators into that flower, so that you know that the only pollen that's gotten in there is from the plant itself. Then you can be much more confident in saving the seeds. With the self-pollinating varieties, you don't need to be as careful, but you still need to be careful. Because they have the male and female pollen in the same flower, there's a much higher probability male pollen is going to get onto the female part of the plant. That said, there is a super easy way to make 100% sure that the seeds are pure. So I'll show you some, and that's going to entail using a blossom bag. Okay, so I came out here to the front garden to show you. So this is a blossom bag. You get it from, I get mine from the dollar store in the bridal aisle. They're supposed to be for little wedding favors. You could definitely make these yourself if you wanted to. So all you need to do is get this around the flowers before they open, because again, we want to make sure that nothing is getting onto them that we don't intend to get onto them. So go find some flowers and I'll show you how to put this on. All right, so if I wanted to save the seeds from the dwarf Metallica tomato is what it's called. I don't have any ripe ones, but they're gorgeous. You can go check out my Instagram if you want to see a picture of what these guys look like. Kind of in love with them. Grew them for the metalhead husband because, I mean, hey, they're called Metallica. But if we wanted to save the seeds, we are going to want to putting it on these flowers because they are already open. And I definitely wouldn't be putting it on this one because that's a fasciated blossom. So normally there would be one hole in the center, that's got two. So I tend to take those off because that's going to make those crazy giant tomatoes that are kind of an earmark of the heirloom varieties. You want to be looking for a tomato flower like that where it's got a single center. But again, this one's open, so we don't want to be using that one. And what I try to do is I try to get it on a branch so there's multiple flowers in it. So if one of them does turn out to be a fasciated blossom, because you can't always tell when they're new, then you've got other good flowers in there. Here on my dwarf Edith stone, we have a perfect example. This would be a branch where I would put the bag on. So I'm gonna do that and then I'll show you guys. Okay, so there we go. The bag is on. The flowers are inside. We're making sure not to pull it. We don't want to pull it too tight, and just make sure that this cinching is well below the flowers so they have room to grow into here. So then what I'll do is I will wait and come checking on it, and I will gently tap the plant like this every day just to kind of increase the chance of having that male and female parts of the plant come into contact. And then once I see that there is an actual tomato forming in here, then I will come and take the bag off, because at that point it has done its job, and I will mark the branch. I tend to use, I'll show you what I do. So here's one that I had marked. So this tomato was in the blossom bag, I saw it forming, and then I just use a little piece of embroidery thread to mark the one that I saved. So this one here was not in the branch. I will just eat that for lunch, and this one is the one that I will save the seeds from. So I've talked about it before, about the need to be aware and to gather data and be present in your garden, and I've also fully acknowledged that that did not happen for me this year. I talk about that a lot in my video on powdery mildew, which I will put a link to up above. But when you're using blossom bags, you need to check to see if any of the tomatoes are pollinated, and I'll show you what happens if you don't. So down here, this is the remnants of the blossom bag. These little tomatoes, and they grew in a square because they were trapped in the bag. I got little flat edges on them. Again, not the end of the world, just funny, but yeah, they were wedged in this bag. I don't even know if I got a picture of it, but it was pretty hilarious. I was out here laughing. The other thing I want to talk about is cross-pollination isn't bad inherently. It depends on what your intent is. If you intend to save that Brandywine tomato for next year, then cross-pollination is going to be bad if you don't use a blossom bag and you end up with something different that is not your treasured brandywine. But in some instances, people want cross-pollination. They want to create a new variety. They're leveraging that cross-pollination to be able to do that. And then new varieties give us amazing new plants to try. I don't want anyone to think that cross-pollination is inherently bad, because it's not. And we also have to know that what can cross-pollinate and what can't. So different types of squash are going to be able to cross-pollinate with themselves, but you're not going to get cross-pollination with the sunflower and a squash, so you don't have to worry about that. Talking about sunflowers, I have to show you guys the amazing amount of seeds that I have this year, and the fact that I actually have them, because many of the times I have planted them against the fence, which then the squirrels come and destroy them. But this year I have them planted in the center of my garden, and it looks like, fingers crossed, I'm going to get all the seeds from every single one. There are all my sunflower seeds. Now we need to really focus on the method for saving the seeds, the actual doing of the saving. So there's two groupings. I would say there's the seeds that you're going to save dry, and then the seeds that you save wet. So when we're talking about seeds that we save wet, that's going to be things like tomato seeds, or if we were doing squash seeds, the things that are going to have like jelly inside. Down here we have all my beans. These are hard, you can hear, and then inside we're gonna find all the beans. So we're gonna want to leave these on the vine and let them dry there. That's the way that I like to do it. And then you know that they're fully mature, and then you can gather all the seeds afterwards. This is probably the easiest method of saving seeds. You just leave them there and wait for them to dry out. When it comes to things like peppers, I would consider that kind of a hybrid dry wet. We have some of the peppers here. So when you're saving peppers, you're gonna wanna leave them till they go on the vine, till they get fully mature. They're gonna go completely red. And then we want them to start getting to this kind of wrinkly and softer texture. It just means that it's absolutely fully mature. And then you can go ahead and take this off and open it up, take all the seeds out, and then I like to leave them on paper towel so that they're fully dry. So we'll bring this guy inside. Also for the dry, but a little bit different, are these carrot seeds. Carrot seeds are one of the ones that fall into the biennial seeds. So these are the ones that needed to overwinter. These are carrots I actually planted in the fall last year, and then I just left them here. We'll bring this one inside too. We'll grab one of these heads. Another biennial seed that I have in the yard are these parsnips. So same things, these are parsnips from last year's. We just left them, and then we have all of these seeds on here that we can harvest. So that's gonna be another form of an overwintered biennial dry seed. I'm covered in carrot seeds now. So we talked outside about the dry and wait, which was our beans. So we can open these up. And even though they're dry, I always like to err on the side of caution. I only had 3 in that one, but I have those there. I always like to err on the side of caution because you don't want any of these to go moldy. I will just set them aside. Last year when I had a huge bean harvest, I had them in a colander and I would just kind of stir them, move them around. You basically want to make sure that they have good air circulation. So I'll take these and I will set those aside, but that's pretty much all you need to do for saving beans. My wet dry classification that I've just made up myself is the peppers. So if we open this up, probably would have been better if I got a knife. But you're going to see all the seeds in there, like in any pepper. And all you want to do is take them out. So what I will make sure that I do is on my paper towel, I will grab a pen and I will write down the variety of seed that I am saving, because once you get all the pepper seeds out, they're all gonna look the same. Same with tomato seeds, pretty much any seeds of the same type. The seeds onto the paper towel and just make sure that they're spaced out. And then every day, and I keep them in a dark space. I put them in my main floor bathroom, and then anytime I pass by, I will just open up the door, go in, move the seeds around on the paper towel, and then just leave them be. Again, I err on the side of caution, so I leave them for a few weeks. Probably don't have to leave them for that long, but I'm just terrified of going through all this hard work of saving, using blossom bags, making sure that my seeds are true, and then having them all go moldy. It's amazing how many seeds you can get from a single fruit. That is it for the pepper. And then afterwards we will give this to the worms because we don't waste anything. So there we have it. All of them just spaced out, and then I'll just come in and move them around each day just to make sure that they're not getting stuck to the paper towel and that they're fully getting dried out. I have some of the carrots, and going through the raised bed to get to the parsnips, I came back and I brushed past the carrots and my shirt's covered in carrot seeds. And I think that's important because remember that seeds are basically the plant's ability to continue into the next generation. So they have ways that they've adapted for that to happen. So here I've put one of the carrot seeds on a paper and you can see all those little spikes. And that's what grabbed onto my clothing. And then if I walked away and I brushed those off, those carrot seeds would be dropped there. Same thing if it grabbed onto an animal and then the seeds get transmitted all over. So it kind of makes, the carrot seeds are kind of like little burrs that the carrot would use to disperse their seeds to other areas. Carrot seed that you're used to getting won't have those on, they've just been brushed off. There we have the carrot seed that you would be more likely to see in your seed package. I have a whole bunch of them in here, so I'm just going to get them all off out of here. And you can see there are so many carrots. So if you're running low on carrot seeds, well worth leaving a plant or two to overwinter because you will end up with a multitude of carrot seeds in the next year. It's also probably why when you get carrots, you end up like getting 200 or 300 seeds because there's no shortage of carrot seeds. So now we need to talk about wet seeds. I have some of these Sunrise Bumblebee. They are my absolute favorite cherry tomato. One thing I like to do, and it's generally I would say a best practice, is when you're saving seeds, you want to save them from the biggest or the best fruit that represents it. So for these, because I love the red stripes on the Sunrise Bumblebee, I'm trying to make sure that I get some that have some good striping on them. Some of them tend to be more yellow, but I'm gonna choose these seeds to save. The other thing you will need is a little mason jar filled with water, and I need a knife. So step one is to, like what I like to do is very carefully cut an X into the bottom, and then you can take it and just squeeze all of the seeds and all of that goop out and into the water. And the idea is the water is going to help if any non-viable seeds should float. And we're going to save this for the worms too. And it just helps to give it a little chance. Basically what's going to start happening in here is it's going to start fermenting. So premise is that we are recreating what would happen if yield Sunrise Bumblebee tomato had fallen off the plant completely ripe, landed on the ground, and then started to rot. I'm sure there's people that don't do this and have success. I know my mom has taken them and just smeared them onto paper towel. I just like going through this. We'll leave them in here. I have a couple more. And again, you're gonna get so many from a single fruit. So again, just here, squeeze them all in. And then once that's all done and you've got all the seeds that you wanna save in and made sure you got all of them out, and it's amazing, some varieties will give you a lot of seeds, some varieties will not give you very many. I think it was the pink jazz tomatoes from Baker Creek that I was growing last year, and huge, big beefsteak tomatoes. Very few seeds. So the Sunrise Bumblebee do give you a lot. So they're in there with the water. And then I will take a paper towel and I'm going to write on it the Sunrise Bumblebee. Like so. I'm going to place it on top with the writing in the middle. Take one of the rings and then you can actually screw them on. Alright, so we have this all in there, and then we're just gonna leave this to sit, and I usually give it a little swirl every day, and it's gonna start getting some mold on top most likely. That's okay. We just wanna leave it so that it can ferment and that it's gonna just, like I said, mimic what would happen if the tomato fell to the ground, rotted, and then reseeded. I will add this into the collection. I'll show you that in a second because I'm saving many different types of tomato seeds this year. And once the time, actually I'll show you one of the other ones. Let's go take a look at them. So we'll put this guy over here. And there we have all the different seeds I'm saving. So some pineapples, some Pratt's Atomic, I've got some cucamelons in there, Dwarfy the Stone, a Purple Cherokee, Metallica, Lucky Tiger, Purple Bumblebee, and the Brad's Crazy Cherry. So these guys are all sitting here. I think the Metallica is, yeah. See, and it's got the mold going on it. I will show you how to get these guys out because this one is looking just about ready. Okay, so we need to get this guy out of here and onto some paper towel. Right. So let's go ahead and we'll take this off. I'm gonna save this because that's what we will put our seeds on once we get them out of that mess. I have a strainer, we'll use that in a second. So we're just gonna take all that fun stuff right off. Get rid of that for a second. And then all the seeds that are in there, we will dump them all in here. Refill the container because we don't want to waste any seeds. And then we have all the little seeds in there. And then we can just dump them out onto the paper towel. So we got most of them. So I'll just spread them out as much as possible. And then these will go into the main floor bathroom to just sit. And then every day I'll just come and move them around a bit so they don't get all stuck to the paper. So this is a zucchini. It is a giant zucchini. It is very hard because I wanted to save the seeds. So zucchini is a summer squash, much like the white scallop squash that I have and many others. And we eat them when they are not mature. If they're left to get fully mature, this is what they turn into. They're going to have a hard, thick skin the same way that you would expect on a winter squash, and this is when the seeds are mature. If we were to save the seeds from a zucchini in the way that we would normally harvest it to eat it, the seeds aren't going to really be, chances are the seeds aren't going to be fully mature, and you would not be able to grow them in the next season. So we have to let it do its thing, get really big and really hard, and then we can cut this open, and we should have some viable seeds inside, making it much harder to cut than a regular zucchini. There we go. And we have some big seeds in there. So now I just need to get all of those out. I'm just going to get a mason jar full of water and I'm going to put the seeds in here. So after much gouging with a spoon to get every little, well, maybe not every bit out, but most of them out, we have a whole lot of seeds here to leave and let ferment in here for a little bit. Another option for saving seeds is to use a hydroponics system. One of the good things about that is it's a controlled environment, so you don't have to worry about cross-pollination. Now it's going to depend on being able to grow whatever plant you're trying to save seeds from in that system. So I have some peppers upstairs in my larger rise garden that I am growing specifically just to save the seeds because I'm not going to have to worry about the cross-pollination. So it's going to make it a lot easier to know that the seeds are pure, and that's kind of how I like to go about it. And on to the final point of saving seeds is storage. So one of the most important things is to remember air circulation, which is what we're accomplishing by basically mixing up the seeds each day once they're drying. Over the winter at some point I'm hoping to make a seed drying rack, which will make things a little bit easier rather than using the paper towel, because I don't like having single-use things in my life. I'm trying to get rid of them. So a seed drying rack would just be a bit more permanent, and then I can just reuse it for all the different seeds that I'm saving. And you're going to want to keep the seeds away from light, and keep them in a cool and dry environment. A lot of people tend to store their seeds in the refrigerator in the crisper drawer because that keeps it cool. You could use different containers to store the seeds in. I actually have some downloadable seed packages available. There is a link in the description below to my free ones, and I have some other more varieties available in my Etsy shop, which I also have the link in the description below, so you can go check those out if you want to store your seeds in some cute little seed packages. I almost forgot, we have to give those leftovers to the worms. Go ahead and put that in there and cover it up so they can eat in peace and quiet. If you want to know any more about my worm composter, I will put a link up above to the video I did on assembling it. And I will be doing a future video on vermicomposting. I really hope that you found that helpful and you are feeling empowered and encouraged to go out there and save seeds in your own garden and to become more self-sufficient and to spend a bit less money to be part of keeping the seeds available for future generations. So if you like this video, then please go ahead and give it a thumbs up because YouTube loves that, and then it helps me reach more people. And if you'd like to see a video on how to build the seed drying rack, go ahead and leave me a comment below and let me know, and then I will be sure to record that when I create it. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy the little things and go out there and make food grow. Bye guys.